In 2003, a neuroscientist at UCLA ran a study that should have changed the way we talk about relationships. Naomi Eisenberger put participants inside an fMRI machine and had them play a simple computer ball-tossing game called Cyberball with two other players. Partway through, the other players stopped throwing the ball to them. No argument, no explanation, just silence and exclusion. The brain scans showed something that stopped the research team cold. The dorsal anterior cingulate cortex lit up. The DACC. This is the brain region responsible for processing the distress component of physical pain. Not the location of pain, not the intensity of pain, the part of the brain that signals, this matters. This is an emergency. Pay attention now. So the same circuit that activates when the body registers physical harm activated in response to being left out of a ball game. Eisenberger and her colleagues published the findings in Science in 2003. The paper's title was a direct question. Does rejection hurt? The answer, documented in brain imaging, was yes, literally. But Eisenberger's fMRI data only explains what happens in the brain. It does not explain what happens below it, in the body. Because when someone you love goes silent, it does not just hurt. Something heavier sets in. Your thinking gets foggy. Your gut drops. Your chest goes tight in a way that does not respond to logic. You feel a specific kind of hollow exhaustion that is different from sadness. That is not emotional fragility. That is your autonomic nervous system running a protocol that is older than language. This is the investigation. The three-state system, what your body does when silence lands. To understand what silence actually does inside the body, you need to understand one of the most consequential discoveries in modern neuroscience. Stephen Porges is a neuroscientist and distinguished university scientist at Indiana University. He spent decades studying the vagus nerve, the longest nerve in the autonomic nervous system, running from the brain stem down through the heart, the lungs, and the gut. In 1995, he published what became known as polyvagal theory in the journal Psychophysiology. He later expanded it in his 2011 book of the same name, published by W. Norton. Porges identified three distinct states the autonomic nervous system cycles through depending on what it perceives in the environment. The first is ventral vagal activation. This is the state of safety and genuine connection. Heart rate is regulated. The face is expressive. The voice carries natural variation in pitch and rhythm. You can think clearly, feel fully, and connect with another person. This is the state you are in when someone you love is present and responsive. The second is sympathetic activation. Fight or flight. The system has detected a threat and mobilized to deal with it. Heart rate climbs, muscles tighten, stress hormones move. This is the state of open conflict. The third state is the one that matters for this investigation. Dorsal vagal shutdown. Porges documented that the dorsal vagal complex is the most phylogenetically ancient component of the autonomic nervous system, shared with our pre-mammalian ancestors. It activates when the nervous system perceives a threat that is neither fightable nor escapable, inescapable danger, and its response is not mobilization, it is collapse. Heart rate drops, energy drains from the limbs, the gut stops functioning normally. Thinking becomes foggy and slow. The person goes still and heavy. Porges' research found that prolonged social silence from an attached person, specifically someone whose presence the nervous system has learned to associate with safety, is one of the triggers for this third state. Your nervous system does not read silence as someone choosing not to speak. It reads silence as an inescapable threat to survival. The reason goes back to what James Cone, a neuroscientist at the University of Virginia, calls social baseline theory, but documented in a 2015 paper with David Spara in Current Directions in Psychological Science. Cohn's research shows that the human brain evolved to treat social connection as its metabolic default. Connection is not a bonus the brain enjoys, it is the baseline condition around which the entire nervous system is calibrated. Disconnection is not neutral. It is a state of elevated metabolic cost, elevated threat processing, elevated physiological burden. The heaviness you feel when someone goes silent is not an overreaction. It is the biological cost of losing your nervous system's primary regulatory anchor. The death that isn't death. Jung and the silence inside. Carl Jung understood something about silence that predates the neuroscience by half a century. In the Red Book, formerly titled Liber Novus, published in full by the Lieberman Foundation in 2009 from Jung's original handwritten and illustrated manuscripts, he documented his inner experience during 1913 and the years following. That period was marked by the withdrawal of his most significant relational connections. The intellectual and personal break from Freud, finalized through correspondence in January 1913. The emotional retreat of colleagues who had defined his professional world. The silence of people who had been central to his sense of who he was. He called what followed psychic death, not as a figure of speech, as a clinical description of an inner event. He wrote of descending into darkness, of losing the thread of identity, of a void opening in the space where human contact and recognition had been. He described it as a literal dissolution of a self that had been built in relationship. In Volume 8 of his collected works, The Structure and Dynamics of the Psyche, Jung provides the framework that explains why this happens. When another person becomes central to your psychological life, a complex forms around them. Jung defined a complex in CW8 as a collection of imaginings that, in consequence of their autonomy, is relatively independent of central conscious control. It is a psychic structure organized around an emotional charge. In a significant relationship, that complex holds memories, expectations, identity material, and emotional associations tied to that specific person. When the person goes silent, the complex does not go silent with them. It keeps running, inside you. They're generating feelings and impulses with no relational object to engage. Jung argued this is precisely why silence from a significant person produces experiences that feel so disproportionate to the external event. Externally, someone has stopped communicating. Internally, a fully charged psychic structure is running in a vacuum with nowhere to direct its energy. That is the inner noise that silence creates. The feeling of dying that silence produces is not dramatic. It is accurate. Something built for connection is suddenly operating in complete isolation. The silence does not extinguish the love. It traps it. The girl in the dark, a nervous system that found its way back. In February 1882, Helen Keller was 19 months old when she contracted an acute illness. She described it in her 1903 autobiography, The Story of My Life, published by Doubleday, as an acute congestion of the stomach and brain. The precise diagnosis remains historically uncertain. What is documented is the result. When the fever broke, she could neither see nor hear. What followed was nearly 6 years of near-complete communicative isolation. Her family loved her and cared for her. She was never abandoned. But without language, without any channel through which genuine human contact could pass in both directions, she lived in a world where connection was structurally impossible. You can be surrounded by people who love you and still be completely alone if no real communication reaches you. On March 3, 1887, Anne Sullivan arrived at the Keller family home in Tuscumbia, Alabama. Sullivan was 20 years old, recently graduated from Perkins School for the Blind in Boston. Her letters to her former teacher at Perkins, Sophia C. Hopkins, are published in the appendix of The Story of My Life. and document what she found. A child alternating between explosive rage and complete withdrawal. Episodes where Helen went still and unreachable, refused contact, sat inside her own darkness with nothing. Stephen Porges would not name the dorsal vagal shutdown state for another century. But Sullivan's letters describe it with precision. For weeks, Sullivan tried to teach Helen the manual alphabet, spelling words into her palm. Helen copied the shapes accurately, but there was no understanding behind the copying. The nervous system that had learned across 6 years that contact leads nowhere was not opening to a new signal. It had learned that reaching out produces nothing, so it had stopped reaching. Then came April 5th, 1887. Sullivan held Helen's hand under a water pump and let cold water run over her fingers. Into her other palm, Sullivan spelled W-A-T-E-R. Keller described what happened in The Story of My Life. She wrote that she stood still with her whole attention fixed on the movements of Sullivan's fingers. Suddenly she felt what she called a misty consciousness, as of something forgotten, a thrill of returning thought. And the mystery of language was revealed to her. Sullivan's letter to Sophia Hopkins, written the same day and published in the same appendix, records what came immediately after. Helen dropped to the ground and asked the name of the ground. She ran to Sullivan and asked the name of Sullivan herself. By the end of that day, according to Sullivan's letter, Helen had learned approximately 30 new words. Porges' research on the social engagement system explains the mechanism. The social engagement system is the ventral vagal pathway governing facial expression, vocal prosody, and touch. It activates in response to specific signals of genuine human contact. When it engages, it pulls the nervous system out of dorsal shutdown and back into the state of connection and learning. Helen Keller's return was not poetic. It was a documented autonomic state change, from dorsal vagal shutdown to ventral vagal engagement, triggered not by explanation, which she could not hear, but by the specific quality of Sullivan's touch. The contact itself was the physiological signal. This is the mechanism in reverse. If genuine human contact can restore a nervous system that spent 6 years in shutdown, then the withdrawal of that contact can push a nervous system into shutdown, even inside a room full of people who claim to love you. Silence is not the absence of something. It is the presence of an inescapable signal. The mirror, what the biology says about both sides of the silence. Turn the lens. If someone you love has gone silent, here is what is actually happening inside you, stated plainly. Your nervous system is not overreacting. It is responding with complete biological accuracy to the withdrawal of a co-regulatory signal it depends on. Cohen's social baseline research at the University of Virginia shows the nervous system evolved to operate in connection, not in isolation. Isolation is not a resting state. It is a high-cost state. The confusion, the inability to think clearly, the physical heaviness. These are not signs of emotional weakness. They are the documented physiological cost of a nervous system running without its baseline. Now the harder direction. If you are the one who has gone silent, this is what your silence is doing to another person's biology. Not what you intend by it, not what you feel justified in doing, what it produces in the body of the person receiving it. Eisenberger's DACC data shows their pain circuit is activating. Porges' polyvagal model shows their nervous system is moving toward dorsal shutdown. Their capacity to think clearly, to reach you, to find the words, is being biologically compromised by the very silence you are using to protect yourself. Jung was precise about this in CW8. The complex does not pause while waiting. It runs. It generates. The inner noise it produces is not proportional to the outer quiet. It is inversely proportional. The louder the silence, the louder what it triggers inside. Silence is not neutral. At the level of the autonomic nervous system, silence is an active signal. It communicates something the nervous system registers as clearly as any word. And what it registers is, the connection is gone. The way back, what actually works, and why? Here is what the research shows actually works when a nervous system has moved into dorsal vagal shutdown from silence. And it is not what most people reach for first. Words are not the fastest route back. Text messages, explanations, apologies delivered through a screen. These engage the cortical system, the thinking brain. See, but a nervous system in dorsal shutdown is operating below the level where language lands cleanly. The rational brain is partially offline. Speaking to it first is like sending a message to a device that has lost its signal. Porges' research on the social engagement system identifies the specific inputs that activate the ventral vagal pathway back to safety. Proximity, a calm, regulated tone of voice, specifically the natural variation in pitch and rhythm that the nervous system reads as a safety signal, a facial expression that is genuinely soft and present, and where it is safe and appropriate, physical touch. These are not suggestions. They are the biological inputs the social engagement system is specifically built to receive. Sullivan did not explain language to Helen Keller. She made contact with her, regulated, persistent, genuine contact. The nervous system responded to the quality of that contact before the mind understood a single word. If you are trying to reach someone whose nervous system has shut down from silence, or trying to find your way back from someone else's, the sequence matters. Regulated presence before explanation, proximity before words. Let the body register safety before asking it to process information. The body comes back before the mind does. This is not a metaphor. It is the sequence Porges' research documents. Keller wrote in The Story of My Life that in the hours after the water pump, she learned approximately 30 new words. Not because Sullivan taught them at speed, because the nervous system, once restored to ventral vagal engagement, is biologically designed for rapid social learning. Connection is not the reward for healing. Connection is the condition under which healing becomes possible. Check in with your body right now. Is there a tightness in your chest? A heaviness that has no name? A fog where clear thinking used to be? That is not weakness. That is your nervous system telling you exactly what it needs. It is not asking you to fight. It is not asking you to collapse. It is asking for a signal that safety is still possible. Your body was trying to tell you something all along.